Tim May of the Dispatch, just finishing up talking to several Buckeye players. Tim, thanks so much for joining us. Anybody guarantee a win today from Ohio State side?
No, I kind of halfway asked one guy, just in tongue-in-cheek about it, and no one. I think Draymond Jones said he guarantees he's going to play hard.
Hey, Tim,
like
Tim, I saw you tweet yesterday, and Stan and I talked about it. It almost felt to me when I watched that Karan Higdon was, I don't want to say baited into it, but I mean, how's he supposed to answer that?
Well, he was,
and you tweeted that that is nothing like the guarantee that you saw Jim Harbaugh make 30 years ago. So take us through what Jim Harbaugh did 32 years ago versus what Karan Higdon did.
32 years ago, actually, 1986, Michigan was riding high and was either, I can't remember if it was number 1 or number 2 in the country, and they got upset by Minnesota, the week before they played Ohio State. And Harbaugh came into the interview because I used to go up there and do the Michigan players and coaches on Monday after we did the Ohio State players on Sunday. And Harbaugh comes into the interview room and sits down, and pretty much without prompting, he went into the guarantee that they were going to win. I guarantee it. They're going to go to the Rose Bowl and all this stuff, and you're kind of sitting there going, wow. And then he saw me 2 months later at the Touchdown Club of Columbus banquet because he was there, and he had Mike Tomczak was there, and he had Mike Tomczak bring him over to introduce himself to me because, he kind of, I didn't cover Michigan, but he remembered my face, hey, and who doesn't, right? But he came over and he said, by then, we know, he knew my name, and he goes, Tim, you remember when I made that guarantee? And I went, yeah. He goes, you should have seen your face. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, your eyes got this big. And he held his fingers out. And I said, I know, because I knew I had my story, man. And they went from there. And the thing is, they remembered that scene about 5 or 6 years ago when he drove the pace car for the Indianapolis 500. He used to be a part owner of an Indy 500 team, but he drove the pace car while he was coming off that Super Bowl year when they went to the Super Bowl with the 49ers. And I went up and shot the bull with him. First time I'd seen him pretty much since that 86 stuff. And he remembered it. I don't know what people's opinions are of Harbaugh. I just don't mind. I like the guy. He's quirky without a doubt. And I think he'll admit to that. But yesterday was more like watching somebody being led to water. and then the word guarantee never came out of Karan Higdon's mouth, and it came out of the asker's mouth. And I don't knock other reporters; they can do what they want to do. But Harbaugh, I asked him about that today on the Big Ten teleconference. He goes, yeah. He goes, I'm listening to that. And he goes, it's like the guy's going, guarantee? You want a guarantee? And finally he goes, he basically says, he expects to win, he and his teammates, so that's why they're playing the game. And, and paraphrasing. So, yeah, it's all weird, man. I think it was Paris Campbell or Draymond or one of them said today, once you put on the helmet to strap it up, whatever's said, the 5 days leading up has very little to do with it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Visiting with Tim May of the Dispatch. And, Tim, all the years you've covered the Ohio State-Michigan game, this one feels like it's kind of a throwback in that the stakes are so high. It's always a big game, of course, great rivalry, but now we have one where it's an elimination game. It's a playoff game, so to speak. Does it feel different when the stakes are high with both teams as highly ranked as they are? Does it feel different to you in terms of covering it?
Yeah, I mean, from the sense of, you're covering something that a lot of people are going to be paying attention to, and that's the way it is most of the time with Ohio State and Michigan. But, you don't have to go far down the path here to see the games where they didn't mean as much, but they still mean a great deal to the two teams involved. But, yeah, I mean, because it clearly is an elimination game for Michigan one way or the other, or not elimination if they win, but clearly for the college football playoff it is for Michigan. With Ohio State, there's still hope out there for the college football playoff, obviously. So, and then, of course, for the Big Ten championship, it's definitely an elimination, get semifinal for the Big Ten championship game, which will be played next week in Lucas Oil. So, yeah, I mean, it's a big game feel in all ways. And then you throw into the mix that Michigan is 0-6 against Urban Meyer. Ohio State has a 6-game win streak. Jim Harbaugh is 0-3 against Urban Meyer as the Michigan coach. And Ohio State's won 15 of the last 17. We all remember. I remember I once referred to the John Cooper era in coaching. You know, people forget he's the second winningest coach in Ohio State history.
Yeah.
I referred to the John Cooper era as this splendid, beautiful scarlet tie with a mustard splotch right in the middle of it. You know, and 2-10-1, you know, it's just tough to explain. But I think I heard Stan talking about it a while ago. But you only get to play this game once a year. You know, I see it more as a continuum than it is a situation to where one means the other, because I don't believe losing to them. I'm talking about if you're Ohio State, losing to the Wolverines in 1980, let's say 86, means you're going to necessarily lose to them in 87, if you follow my drift, because they're different teams.
Right.
And you know, 86 and 87 are great examples of why, you know, you shouldn't necessarily look at what's happened before as meaning that's what you're going to see.
Stan, when you played, did you guys feel the weight of the struggles against Michigan before every game, or did it occur during the game? I mean, what Tim's talking about, can it carry over to this Michigan team, or are they going into this like, nope, different year, no big deal?
Well, I guess I thought Tim's point, meaning based on how the team has played that season, you don't know what the outcome of this game is. So not necessarily what happened the year before in the game.
I understand.
But for us, no, it was pretty heavy. I told you, because the coaches didn't let us enjoy the week. I mean, they flipped on us. Now, they weren't as bad as Woody, what I found out yesterday. I mean, Coop wasn't tearing off hats and T-shirts. But yeah, I mean, the level of intensity, it was like everything changed, and you knew that this was the game. You knew it was important. And I'll say this, just to add on to that, Tim. I want to add, get your thought.
Yeah, wait a minute. I moved up here in 1976, and well, as I like to say, I moved up here to go to Ohio State football games and also to maybe go to school, you know. And but I remember, you know, I already knew about the Ohio State Michigan game. I was steeped in it, man, and moving up here from Texas, and you know, the first three games I saw in the Ohio State Michigan series, Ohio State did not score a touchdown.
Yeah.
76, 77, 78. Well, you know, who knew how to beat Michigan more than Woody Hayes, if you follow my drift? But that didn't matter. I mean, you know, sometimes the other team is either better or makes that play or two that makes the difference. And, you know, you guys had a great chance, and I'm not dredging up an old wound here for you, Stan, but in 97,
you are, but go ahead.
But in 97, that team was number one in the country, and you had a couple of interceptions in that game you threw, but otherwise, that was a tooth-and-nail game, if you remember correctly. I mean,
yeah, my second pick went back to the house. Well, thanks, Tim. I think it's wonderful of you.
You know what I'm saying. I mean,
you're right. It was the game. They were number one team in the country, and they snuck out of there with a punt return and a pick six. But let me ask you this, though, because I do feel like the game has been enhanced. I mean, we've watched Ohio State and Michigan battle for a Big Ten championship. We've seen that. Yeah. But the playoff, to me, enhances it. Because even back then, if you were Big Ten champs, just go ask Penn State, an undefeated Penn State team in 1994, didn't get a national championship. Now you're guaranteed to play for it. Do you feel the same way like now in the playoff era with this particular game, because these teams are playing to get in, it's enhanced?
Yes. I mean, I do. I mean, but, you know, I keep thinking back to the real swing in that regard was 2006. Ohio State and Michigan played in the game of the century, the two best teams in the country. And if one of them beats the other, shouldn't they play again for the national championship? You remember all that buildup. Mm-hmm. And then Ohio State wins the game of the century, one of the great games I've ever witnessed in Ohio Stadium, and literally went out and, you know, losing Ted Ginn Jr. in that first play hurt them really bad, but went out and sort of laid an egg, you know, against Florida in the national championship game because, you know, everybody else was supposed to genuflect after Ohio State wins that game. So now, you know, it is definitely a sense of, well, there's this game this week, but you know what? There's more at stake for the winner, you know, down the road. So it's not the end of it all. It's really, in some respects, just the beginning of it all, the beginning of the postseason for these two teams. And, I think that has definitely cast a different kind of feel to it.
Hey, Tim, before I let you go, I want to ask you, if I asked you in your mind, if you had to guess, which Ohio State unit is going to be more important? Is it more important for Ohio State's offense to play well Saturday, or is it more important for Ohio State's defense to play well Saturday?
Well, if I was pushed into a if I was pushed into a corner, I believe in offense. I believe whenever you score touchdowns, it changes the game dramatically, one way or the other. And I think the fact that if you can prove you can score touchdowns, it puts a little more pressure on the other team. If you follow my drift,
right?
You know, that was the Indianapolis Colts pattern for building a team around Peyton Manning. You know, they put most of their money into the offense and a little bit of their money into some key players on defense and went after it. It's the same in college football. If you score touchdowns, it puts pressure on the other team to match it. And so I think it's important that no matter what, the Ohio State offense play well on Saturday against the number one defense in the country. But, you know, if the defense can get a few key stops, you're not asking for them to reinvent defensive football because I'm not even sure they're capable of doing that at this point. But if you can just get some key stops, you know, have a fumble that goes into the end zone that you recover instead of the other team recovering like last week.
Right.
Crazy stuff like that. If you can keep that from happening, Ohio State's got has a hell of a chance. Anybody thinks Ohio State doesn't have a chance in this game is not paying attention because this is a great passing football team.
Yep.
And that always gives you a chance against a great defense.
Hey, Tim, appreciate it very much. Always love your insight, and we'll be reading your stuff in the Dispatch. Appreciate it very much.
Hey, always a pleasure, fellas. You know that.